heater! I dare you to hit it!
He'll be sorry.
Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
A swing and a drive to deep right. Clear the deck. Cannonball coming. Left field. It is out of here.
What up? What's good? We are back. Another episode of Baseball Unstitched. And for the second week in a row, you lucky listeners and watchers get me and Jackson because Ryan is not on vacation. Ryan moved this weekend. And in the midst of moving, lost electricity. So Ryan is not available tonight for the recording of the podcast, but to stay on schedule for everyone out there, we are following through with getting this done tonight. Jackson is joining me to bring you what we think is going to be a pretty good episode. We're going to talk a little bit, obviously, about this week in baseball. We're going to highlight some starting pitchers that have kind of surprised everybody in baseball. And then we'll move over to a man that across baseball for a long time was known as the most underrated player in the game and now is at a point of being known as future Hall of Famer. And that's Jose Ramirez. We'll go through the history that he made with the Guardians, his career by the numbers up to this point. We'll move on to Jackson's bullpen. Hopefully I and you learn a little something new. And then finally, we will go through really some of the changes since 2020 that we've seen across the MLB with the inception of ABS this year. Not inception, but the inaction. That might be a worse word, actually. Usage of ABS this year. We wanted to take a look back at some of the things like Universal DH, Ghost Runner, Pitch Clock, and others, and talk through their impact for different players across the game as a whole, and where we think this is potentially going. And then we'll finish up with some final thoughts and get on out of here. With that, Jackson, how was your week?
Weekend was pretty good. Traveled again for baseball at ETSU. I had to go to Belmont, which was awesome. Belmont, for those who don't know, is in Nashville, like 15, 20 minutes from where I grew up. So got to hang out with the family, stay at home for a night or two. Won the series 2-3, nice. Back in Johnson City, and then we go to Georgia tomorrow, which, for those who don't know, Georgia, a really good baseball team. It's going to be a good test for us. But yeah, weekend was good.
And ETSU so far this year, sitting at 6-3 in conference, second in the Southern Conference. Wofford is leading the way up to this point. But you guys haven't really played a lot of home games in conference quite yet. And I think that's where you guys do a lot of your damage. So I'm expecting back half of the season, those backdoor Bucks are going to find their way staying at the top of the Southern Conference, pushing for a back-to-back SoCon championship. Jackson, this week in baseball, kick us off. Who do you got?
First off, I'm going with Wilson Contreras up in Boston. Former Cardinal, got a standing ovation this week, which love that for Cardinals fans, Classy fans in baseball. Just look at me, classy fan right here. He had a great week, though. 11 for 23, 2 bombs, 9 RBIs, 6 walks. I mean, this is a guy that Boston traded for him with the intention of being a middle-of-the-order bat, and he proved that, and he showed that this week, what he can do there. Excited to see if he can keep that up.
I love it. Another guy, speaking of those classy Cardinals, Jordan Walker. And I think my favorite part about this is somebody asked him yesterday about, the breakout or kind of coming back and playing well, and he just said, we're focused in front. I'm not going to talk about what I was, what I didn't do. I'm going to talk about what I have the opportunity to do and how good things are going. Remember, he's only 23 years old. This is the best we've seen him. Just this week alone went 9 for 24, 3 home runs. I believe he leads the league with 7 total, 7 RBIs, 6 runs. This is what the Cardinals have been looking for out of him, right? You start mixing in him, Mason Wynn, J.J. Weatherholt. There's a lot of young talent over in St. Louis that could start pushing them back to being a perennial team to watch in the NL Central.
Yeah, they've definitely been more fun to watch than anticipated this year. And another guy who's fun to watch this past week, Bryce Harper, a guy who had a rough start to the year after his GM told him this is a guy who might not be elite. But guess what? Bryce Harper is still elite. one of the better hitters in baseball. This week went 10 for 19, 5 extra base hits, drew 6 walks, hit a home run. I mean, this is a guy who's been a perennial MVP candidate for almost a decade now, future Hall of Famer, and guess what? He's still good at baseball.
Yeah, I mean, he's an electric factory when he is on. Another guy very similar, Shohei Ohtani. It was only a matter of time after the first few weeks of the season until he started turning it on, and now it feels like every night he's hitting a double, he's hitting a home run. This week alone, 8 for 24, 3 home runs, 5 total extra base hits. He scored 5 runs and was walked 6 times. He's finding the right groove, and not that the Dodgers need it, but it's definitely making them all that much more powerful.
Yeah, he's looked incredible. Another guy, Ryan, wish he could talk about this one right now. James Wood from the Nationals fan. James Wood's been incredible the past week. This is a guy who back half of last year, after making the All-Star game, back half of last year did not look incredible. Beginning of this year also struggled to start. He was really on fire last week. They went 12 for 23 with 3 homers, 6 extra base hits, 10 RBIs, 6 walks. He helped them go 4-2 this week. They swept the Brewers. Nationals might be fun this year. Cade Cavalli is pitching good. C.J. Abrams, I believe, hit a home run today. Another one, like 5th of the year, I believe. Could be wrong there.
Yes,
around
sir.
5th, 6th of the year. The Nationals are fun, and James Wood is potentially the franchise cornerstone for that team, and he's shown it last week after what's been a slow start and a slow end to last year for him.
Yeah, it seems like he's finding that groove again. He looks more comfortable in the box, like he's not trying to do as much. I think it helps when there's other young players around him that are starting to find success. Another guy on the other side of the ball, Logan Gilbert, 2 starts this week, 13 innings pitched, 10 hits, 3 runs, 1 walk, 12 Ks. He's starting to look back on track. Looks like he's getting a little bit more comfortable with his stuff. And even though they lost his start, shut down a really tough Rangers team, and then shut down an Astros team on the way to a 4-game sweep. First time since 2018 that the Mariners have swept the Astros in a 4-game set. Really big for them to get that out of the way early in the year. It's very possible that that is important for the tiebreaker at the end of the season when we're talking about the playoffs. Jackson, last one for us.
Yeah, Jose Soriano, this is a guy who I put on the Scudder Report this week. And for the second time this year, and only 3 Scudder Reports was on it. He has been unbelievable this year. 2 starts, 15 innings pitched, 1 run, 20 strikeouts over the last 15 innings pitched, just 3 walks. He is unbelievable so far this year.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for him is how many innings he's throwing, right? Already 27 innings through 4 outings. He's averaging over 6 innings per start. It's really important for a team that has young bullpen arms to make sure that you're not putting a lot of the load on them. But we're going to talk a little bit more about Jose Soriano, and it bleeds us right into our first topic of the day of 2 very surprising arms that are worthy of highlighting. We're going to start with Soriano because what he's done through 4 starts has been borderline top of baseball from a starting pitcher's perspective. I know every time we say that, we have to clarify that we're talking about starting pitchers because Mason Miller exists, and guys literally cannot put the ball in play against him. That aside, Jose Soriano, tell me a little bit more about the stuff. Help me understand a little bit more about why he's become a little bit more dominant this year as opposed to last year and, his time so far in the big leagues up to this point.
Yeah, Soriano's been a guy who so far in his career, he's been a fine starting pitcher. I don't want anyone to think he hasn't been. Had a 4.26 ERA across 31 starts last year. But this was at the beginning of the year. You looked at this Angels rotation, and you didn't know who that guy was going to be. You had Grayson Rodriguez. He's been hurt. Kikuchi. You weren't sure what you were going to get. You had a bunch of arms you trusted, but not really that ace. Soriano's kind of stepped up and been that ace. Before I talk about previous years or where he's been, so far this year, across 4 starts and 27 innings pitched, has a 0.33 ERA, 31 strikeouts, and just 9 walks, 1 run, 9 hits given up across 27 innings pitched. Borderline unbelievable. One of the big things for him so far this year has been that walk number. First start of the year, walked 4 guys, which has been hanging around his career average, which has been around 4. Since then, just 5 walks in 3 starts. That has been
Jesus.
borderline absolutely incredible for him. That's something that any pitching coach knows. If you can keep free guys off the bases, you're going to be successful. A big reason for him being better this year is a reduction in the sinker usage from last year. Last year, he was throwing it around 49% of the time, and he was almost basically a 2-pitch pitcher. Sinker, curveball, used those 2 pitches 77% of the time. That is a very high usage. He's since then mixed it up a lot more. Just 30% sinker usage, 27% curveball, up the fastball usage a lot to 23%. Big thing for that is he's using the fastball a lot more against lefties. For those who don't know, sinkers typically play a lot better on same side guys. So he runs the sinker in on righties and uses the fastball to kind of attack top and the bottom of the zone against lefties, but still mixes the sinker in to get the occasional ground ball against left-handers. And he's also mixed in the splitter a lot more as well, especially against lefties, 20% usage against lefties. His splitter is a really depthy pitch, -4, -5 IVB. Generates a lot of whiffs for him. Very good pitch. He's been borderline unreal this year. One of the better starters in baseball, generating chase. The ground ball rate, 61% as well.
So as I look at some of his numbers, one of the things that jumps out to me, the batting average on balls in play is extremely low, right? We're talking about a BABIP of 143. It's not really sustainable if you're pitching in the quantities that Soriano is, right? If you're going to throw 180 innings, 160 innings, getting something closer to like a 200, maybe even a 220 mark would be fantastic. 143, it's not surprising that we see a 2.62 FIP, right? A FIP is going to be more aligned to what you're specifically doing as a pitcher. And then when you start looking at expected ERA at 2.76, we're going to start talking about situations. We're going to start talking about hard hit rates, things that are generally indicative of what bat to ball looks like, especially for a guy like this that might not sustain a 32 to 35% chase and whiff rate as the year goes on. But what I am seeing very noticeably different in that pitch usage is the ramp up of the four seam. When you can leverage a 98 mile an hour four seam with command and not just throw it as a pitch every now and then to throw off the shape of the sinker, you can actually benefit from softer contact on the sinker. You can still run the sinker 30% of the time, but when hitters know the fastball is a more realistic option that he could throw, the likelihood is you're going to get the bottom of some barrels. You're going to get that high ground ball rate like he's getting this year, because guys aren't going to be able to take advantage of trying to attack specifically a sinker when they see something hard. As a hitter, you're not going to work to get underneath the baseball knowing the type of depth that he's going to get on something firm. And then off of that, when you continue to look at the change in pitch mix, you start to see that, you know, the splitter is still going to work in play, but it's going to be extremely heavy on the left-handed hitters. And the benefit there for him is that he can actually play it really well off his curveball with the right amount of depth and the right amount of deception if you're sequencing it correctly. Lefties, you have to have something soft arm side, but unfortunately you can't really. I don't love playing it off a sinker. That's what he's doing right now. I think as we see the year go on, you'll see the four seam ramp up to lefties and you'll see the sinker decrease, because he doesn't necessarily need it when he can run the fastball, splitter, and curveball off of each other against left-handed hitters, who I'm curious to know, and I would guess probably have hit him a little bit better in his career, just because, or at least for a higher slug in his career, just based off of the arsenal that he throws. Because he's either in the dirt or he's out over the plate because of the way that his shapes work. And I think that as a left-handed hitter, a sinker on the outer half is the easiest fastball for me to hit. So, you know, when you look at Soriano, I think it's not surprising, might be the wrong word, which is where we started the conversation. I think the expectation is that he's going to continue being a top-level arm for the Angels. I don't know that the expectation is that he's going to continue being a top-level arm in the league. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like I said, he has a .33 ERA right now. I can almost 100% guarantee he will not have a .33 ERA in 2 or 3 months.
Well, sure.
Yeah, but I think he can be that top of the line arm for them. There is definitely some stats to help him, or he's going to get to the point where he's not going to have this good of a start. He's just off to a hot start right now, but I think he can settle into that like 3 to 3.5 ERA range, maybe even sub 3 mark, and be an ace like arm for the Angels. The thing to counter off the batting average on balls in play is the one thing that's going to help him keep it lower, definitely not the 143 mark, but keep it lower, is that 61% ground ball rate. Ground balls have a lower batting average expectancy than any other type of ball in play, so that's going to help him keep that BABIP lower. So hopefully he doesn't get too big of a BABIP swing where he's 143 now, and then next month it's going to be 400. Hopefully with that ground ball rate, he can help keep it steadily down, which should help him out a lot more to keep this hot start going the rest of the year.
I love it. Moving on to the second guy we wanted to talk about, and I think maybe even a little bit more interesting to talk about, right? Because Soriano's 27 years old. I would say still very much in the, prime might be the wrong word, but still very much physically in a state of comfort with his body to do the things he's trying to do. On the flip side, I want to talk about 34-year-old Michael Wacha. Michael Wacha has been pitching in this league for a while now. And over that time, we've seen him change his arsenal. We've seen him grow his arsenal, especially now with the Royals alongside a guy like Seth Lugo, kind of becoming more of a kitchen sink pitcher. I mean, if you're going to be in the league from the point of 2013 all the way now to 2026, you kind of have to. In the move to 2026, we're seeing a very similar arm to what Wacha was in 2025 in terms of stuff, in terms of arsenal usage, in terms of the way he's attacking and sequencing hitters. But up to this point, in 3 starts, we're seeing a guy who's averaging 7 innings per start, only giving up 1 run, 5 walks, and 17 strikeouts. Again, not a guy who's going to blow the ball by you. Not a guy who's going to rely on 2 pitches. But right now, as it stands, he's a 98th percentile run value pitcher. He's doing his job chucking the rock. And he's doing it on the back of getting a lot of chase. And I think on the back of leveraging a new-ish changeup shape and cutter shape. The cutter is going to be a pitch that's going to get used more heavily to the right-handed hitters. He's going to work it more on the outer half of the plate, try and get some soft contact on what would normally be expected is a 4-seam or a sinker. But he's using the slider less, right? He's trying to tighten up that shape, not necessarily use a slower pitch like a slider where it's not necessary, and potentially leverage the curveball in that slot instead. The biggest thing is against left-handed hitters. The changeup added almost 3 inches of induced vertical break, which means it has less depth. Having less depth can sometimes be a good thing for a pitch like a changeup when it moves much slower. Depth is really good when you throw an 89 to 90 mile an hour changeup, because you need something that's going to run firm and dive at the last second. When your changeup is 10 mile an hour slower than your fastball, and it's 82 to 85 miles an hour, or 80 to 82 miles an hour, it needs to have some variable look to the fastball that gets guys to swing and not see it kind of float into the zone. If you look at some video from 2025, the changeup has a lot more depth, but it also kind of has this floating action. So if it starts up, it's going to kind of float down into the lower part of the zone. If it starts down, it's going to dive and everyone knows and no one's swinging over it. Now, it's got a little bit of a flatter shape, a little bit less depth, but it looks a whole heck of a lot more like the fastball. So even though it's the same amount of miles per hour slower, it deceptively and visually looks to a hitter like a fastball for longer. The way he's doing it based on the deviation of spin that we're seeing is that he's probably changed the grip a little bit to take advantage of some more seam shifted wake. Being able to do that and leverage the way that you naturally throw the ball, A, is going to keep a guy at his age throwing a lot longer this season, but it's also going to come out of the hand a lot more like a fastball and going to just take off with the seams and grab that depth, but look the same out of the hand. What we're seeing in the numbers, what we're seeing in what he's been able to do so far this year tells me it's working. Now, Jackson, you could correct me if I've been wrong on any of this, but this is what I have learned in taking advantage of Michael Wacha as my use case and getting a better understanding of how all these things work and how the numbers make sense and why it would be working for a guy at 34 who doesn't necessarily throw very hard relative to the rest of the league.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to bring up that I just completely agreed with is the changeup. Changeups as of late have become more famous. You see the kick changes, the depthy splitters. It's more cool to throw a changeup that has a lot of depth. We've seen a lot more Logan Webb, Devin Williams, the airbender changeups. However, the whole point when a changeup was invented was it to look like the fastball and be a little bit slower to keep the hitter off balance. You see other guys in the league have a lot of success with these high IVB changeups that are a lot slower. The one that comes to mind immediately for me is Cleveland Guardians' Joey Cantillo. His changeup last year, I believe, had the third highest whiff rate of any pitch in baseball. Its shape sucks. I will be the first one to say it does not have a great shape on it. His changeup has 14 IVB, 10 horizontal. That's not great, especially when his fastball is at 18 and 7, just a little bit of differential. However, his changeup is 80 miles an hour and his fastball is 92. Those two pitches are going to look very similar most of the way up there. And then at the last second, the changeup's going to slow up and have a little bit more depth and then create that whip. I've seen it here at ETSU. Last year, one of our best pitchers, our Saturday guy, had a similar shaped changeup that was at 77 miles an hour when his fastball was 91, 92. Hit a 50+% whiff rate on it last year because it looks so similar to the fastball. These changeups that create crazy velo differential without having crazy movement differential are almost more effective in some ways than the crazy airbender changeups because they're so much tougher to pick up on compared to the fastball.
And I think, the fastball needs to have its conversation as well because he's made a little bit of adjustment to the fastball that I think when you think about how seam shifted wake works and how the ball is going to come out of Wacha's hand, the fact that the fastball is actually moving the other direction a little bit more now, he's added a little bit of cut ride to that shape, also benefits the soft contact that he's working for. It's clear he's trying to get deep into games. It's clear he's not trying to strike guys out. He wants to work soft contact. He wants hitters thinking in the box. Right now, we're looking at a guy who's continued to grow fastball usage while decreasing in velo. That's not normal in the game as it stands today because everyone's looking for the velocity. Everyone stays on top of what pitchers are changing and doing, and they take advantage of fastball growth or fastball usage if you're going to be over the plate with it, if you can't command it. But Wacha kind of, gives us this look that's more similar to the Greg Maddoxes later in their career, where it's about leveraging the fastball in the right counts. It's about leveraging the fastball in the right spots in the zone where hitters have deficiencies. And him being able to ramp that up allows him to get through an order 3 times. If you can throw the fastball and the changeup maybe, or the fastball and the splitter, or fastball and curveball only the first time through an order, he opens up 2 or 3 more pitches as he goes through the order a second time. Then you get to the third time through, and at that point it's table stakes. Everyone's seen everything already, so how can you pick apart what they haven't done well against you already in that day? And I think that's what he and working with a guy like Salvador Perez or Carter Jensen behind the plate, he's really benefited from because both of those guys do a really good job back there of calling a game, of managing a game plan. And I know that Wacha is a big part of making that happen. But just continuing to get the soft contact, to get outs as the game goes on, it's very similar to what you see Soriano benefiting from. He just doesn't have Soriano's 98-mile-an-hour fastball to lean on when necessary. Not anymore. I don't know. I actually don't know if he ever had that. I'm gonna guess that Michael Wacha did not ever have that. I'm gonna say he was probably up to 95 at one point.
I think he threw pretty hard because he came up as a Cardinal.
Yeah.
And I remember he threw pretty decently hard. I remember my grandfather, my dad's side, big Cardinals fan, was always hyping him up as a young prospect. And I think he came up and gave like 10 runs in his first start. And we were all like, this guy sucks. Turned out to be a pretty decent pitcher. He hung around for a while. I've always loved Wacha. I thought he did a great job as a Cardinal, and I've always rooted for him later in his career. And he's been awesome so far this year. I love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a stretch there where he was a positive WAR pitcher for, 5 straight to start his career, 6 straight to start his career, and then, had a couple down years, got his way from team to team, found a little bit of a groove here with the Royals. He's been a 3+ F-WAR pitcher for the last 2 years, and he's already starting the year on a good path. It's fun to see guys kind of go through this renaissance in their career, especially guys that have been around forever. And I love it because it shows younger pitchers that there's more than just stuff. There's more than just showing up and chucking it. And I think younger guys, especially coming through the Royals organization, are going to start to see that and benefit from it, much like Michael Wacha did coming up in the Cardinals organization and seeing the Chris Carpenters of the world and the oh my God,
Wainwright.
Thank you, the Adam Wainwrights of the world, but that's what it is, right? It's watching the guys before you and understanding a different way to do things. And Michael Wacha is probably not going to stay on this pace of giving up almost no runs, but he's going to stay on this pace of giving them innings and keeping them in ball games day after day, and that's really all that they're asking of him when you've got guys like Noah Cameron and Chris Bubich and Cole Reagans leading your staff. So up to that, the Royals started the year all right, similar to everybody else, pretty much playing 500 baseball, whether you like it or not. And whether or not you think that this is new, this happens every season. Go look at the standings of like the last 5 seasons. It's quite literally like 75% of the league is 500 after the first 15 games. It always happens, especially since the balanced schedule. It happens because everyone's playing everybody. Your team will be fine. Moving on to our second topic of the day. And Ryan, for you out there listening, we are going to try and do this justice. But this topic was for you. I want you to know that I put this topic on the outline for you. But Jackson, we're going to dig into Jose Ramirez. A guy who, by many accounts and by many outlets and many people, had dubbed him for a very long time the most underrated player in the game of baseball. And the reason why people often did that was because Jose Ramirez was not winning awards. Everyone else was winning MVPs. Everyone else was winning, Rookie of the Year, or they were winning something. Jose Ramirez was just consistently being one of the better players in the game of baseball. Across his career from 2016 to 2025, he has been a part of MVP voting every year except for 2019. Every year except for 2019. That is insane. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those he was top 5 in MVP voting. One time he was second, and twice he was third. He has been one of the most consistent players in the game of baseball, and to that, very recently, broke a record in Guardians, Indians, Cleveland baseball history, that's the right way to say it, playing 1,620 games, now I think 1,625 games at the end of the recording of this podcast episode, taking down Terry Turner, who held the record for Cleveland baseball history with 1,619 games played. And that is a huge mark because in an era where players are following the money and going contract to contract, in an era where the amount of service time averaged by Major League Baseball players is under 4 years per player. Jose Ramirez has continuously been at the end of the spectrum of the elite of the elite. And unfortunately, during his time in his career, he was in the league when the Arenados were dominating and Manny Machado was as good as he was. And that's just talking about defensive and offensive play from third baseman. And this is a guy who was still taking home Silver Sluggers because he has 6 of those, who's still making All-Star games because he has 7 of those. And this isn't a 14-year career. This guy's been so insanely consistent that he has 7 straight full seasons of 20 home runs and 20 stolen bases. Because, yeah, he doesn't just hit for power. He doesn't just hit the ball in the gap. He steals bases. He's got 401 career doubles. I believe he is he's 9th of all current players in doubles. He's 3rd in Cleveland baseball history. 287 career home runs. 2nd in Cleveland baseball history. 1,678 hits. Yes, that is averaging more than 1 per game played. 7th in Cleveland baseball history. 956 RBIs. 2nd in Cleveland baseball history. And through only 13 plus seasons, because we're only 15 games in, 57.9 B-WAR, 4th in Cleveland baseball history. In the modern era, he is the greatest Cleveland baseball player to pass through that town. There is absolutely no question about that in any way, shape, or form. Jackson, those numbers are ridiculous.
Yeah, Jose Ramirez is just borderline unbelievable. I was talking to my dad this weekend about just Hall of Famers currently playing the game, and I looked at him and I said, I think Jose Ramirez, and he's like, really, are you sure? I was like, yeah. And I read him off his numbers, and he looked at me, he was like, yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a guy with 287 home runs, 292 stolen bases. He'll be 300 by the end of the year. Other players to have 300. Just 8 in the MLB history have done it. Barry Bonds, his dad, Bobby Bonds, Willie Mays, Alex Rodriguez, Steve Finley, Andre Dawson, Carlos Beltran, Reggie Sanders. That is a bunch of Hall of Famers and a bunch of the best players to ever play baseball who are on that list. This is a guy who year in, year out does the thing. I talked about this earlier a couple months ago when talking about Logan Webb. The most important thing a player can do is play baseball games. We never have to worry about the what if he's healthy with Jose Ramirez. Over the past, since 2021, he's played 152, 157, 156, 158, 158 games. 16 already this year, on pace to play a lot of games as well. Year in, year out, you know this guy's going to play 150 plus games, give you 2020. And when you're the head of an organization, you know you can count on that year in and year out. It's so much easier to build a ball club around that when you know you have that guy in the middle of your order who's going to create and wreak havoc on other teams.
It is so fascinating when you look at the, Hall of Fame is a great way to talk about him, right? Even the Guardians PA announcer, when they made an announcement mid-game about him setting the new record for games played in Cleveland baseball history, called him future Hall of Famer Jose Ramirez. And this is the hard part about the Hall of Fame, right? Not a single person on this earth would sit there and say, oh yeah, Jose Ramirez isn't going to be a Hall of Famer. Almost everybody who watches baseball believes it. But awards? Not really. No MVPs, not a Rookie of the Year, no championships, right? Not a lot of those markings across his ledger. 1,600 hits, 287 home runs. Here's what's really going to happen, though. By the time we look back in 6 years and he hits 20 years in his career, we're going to see a guy that's probably going to have almost 400 home runs, probably more. We're going to see a guy that's got 2,500 plus hits. We're going to see a guy that's probably going to have 450 plus stolen bases. And he's going to lead the Guardians historically in almost every category that isn't owned by players of a bygone era. And I think recognizing how incredible that consistency is when you're talking about a guy who has been top 2 or 3 in baseball in WAR for the last 8 years individually and still isn't winning those awards. It's kind of an unfathomable statement when you start to consider the situation. The year that he came in second in the MVP race was in the 2020 season. Jose Abreu, in the 60-game stretch that was a shortened COVID season, put up absurd numbers and took the MVP. In the next year, when the 2 previous years when he was third in MVP voting, talking about a guy who came behind Mookie Betts and Mike Trout when they were playing the best baseball anyone has ever seen. Right? These are unfortunate situations for how good of a year he's put up. He's not leading in categories, but he's definitely leading in top 5s across all categories every single year. So I hope that we did Jose Ramirez some level of justice in trying to convey to you as a listener how good he has been throughout his career, but more so just to tell you, keep paying attention. Pay more attention. If you're not paying attention, focus on him. And I'll tell you a guy who I think we're going to be having this conversation about in 2 or 3 years, who's not getting the love but certainly deserves it, is Zach Neto. If you watch what he's starting to do at shortstop for the Angels, it's a guy who we could see go rattle off 3 to 5 straight years of 30-30 seasons at a premier position. And that's basically what Jose Ramirez has done. If he can do it for another 2 years, put up his 2020 seasons, he will tie both Barry and Bobby Bonds for 9 consecutive full seasons, putting up a 2020 year with home runs and stolen bases. It would be another class of baseball for him to get to. Jackson, before we move on, any final thoughts from you on Jose Ramirez?
Not really. Just this is a guy who I grew up watching. One of the better baseball players that I've really seen in my lifetime. I remember watching him 2015, 2016, 2017. I was a big Andrew Miller guy on those Indians teams, so really like watching them play. And he was a young player then and still one of the better players on those teams. And to see a decade later, he's still one of the better players in baseball is just absolutely impressive.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, moving on. Now our favorite segment, your favorite segment, an opportunity for us to all learn. Jackson, we move it over to you in Jackson's bullpen. What do you got for us today?
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, I spent this weekend at home. And one of my favorite parts about going home is me and my dad basically just talk baseball nonstop all day, every day. That's where I got all this from. And one of our favorite conversations to always talk about is Hall of Fame. Who's in the Hall of Fame? Who might get in? Who's a snub? And we talked about 3 active players who I believe are all pretty close. Very interesting cases, all pitchers, all relief pitchers. And that is Kenley Jansen, Craig Kimbrell, and Aroldis Chapman. These 3 guys are kind of that next wave of relievers who are going to be on the ballot, who are going to have strong cases, but it's going to be interesting to see how they are handled. The past 5 to 10 years, we've seen a very strong trend of relievers starting to get in. Lee Smith got in, I believe, around 5 to 10 years ago. Billy Wagner just a couple years ago. We started to see a lot more love for relievers, and these 3 guys seem to be the next 3 who are going to be considered very heavily for the Hall of Fame. Chapman, 24.4 career B-WAR right now, 370 career saves, but just has 826 innings pitched. I believe Billy Wagner is the only current Hall of Famer with under 1,000 career innings pitched. Craig Kimbrell, very similar, 22.8 career WAR, 440 career saves with 822 innings pitched. And then Kenley Jansen, also very similar, 24.3 career WAR, 478 saves. I believe he's now 3rd all time with 930 innings pitched. He might reach that 1,000 mark. It's going to be interesting to see how Hall of Fame voters do with relievers. It has always been a very tough position to deal with, as they don't rack up the counting stats that other positions rack up, and their value on the game is so tough to pick up on, given they're only pitching maybe 3 to 4 innings every 8 to 9 days. Like, it's tough to show that value, and it's going to be interesting to see how these 3 guys are shown.
Yeah, and I think the innings pitched one is always where they lean on, right? And that's why it was such a big deal with Billy Wagner. And we actually talked about this with Brad Lidge when he was on the podcast, and he was saying it was such a big thing for relievers. And he was talking to other guys when Billy Wagner got in, and he has a special relationship with Wagner alone, but talking to some other relievers that he had played with or that he knew throughout the league, and talking about how important it was for a guy under 1,000 innings to get in because they lean on that so heavily. And I always say this, every reliever is closer to being a middle reliever you've never heard of than they are to being Mariano Rivera. And I say that because Mariano Rivera is the gold standard.
Yeah.
1,200 plus innings pitched, 652 saves. You could say the same thing about Trevor Hoffman. You could say the same thing about Kenley Jansen. Kenley Jansen is quite literally as close as you could get to being Mariano Rivera and not be Mariano Rivera behind Trevor Hoffman. He is third in MLB history in saves with 478. Craig Kimbrell, not far behind, 38 behind with 440. Aroldis Chapman, 370. And you're talking about guys who in their time, in their career, showed up and did the thing over and over and over again. And every team, every year continued to want those guys because those are the guys that they could count on, that they knew what they were bringing to the ballpark. They knew how to handle the moment. They knew how to handle the situation. And you're starting to see the sparkling hint of some guys who might kind of fall into that in the future, right? You're seeing your Cade Smiths. You're seeing your Mason Millers. And the question just always becomes, how long will it last? Exactly. Can they develop another pitch? Can they keep themselves going for the next 10 years and continue to be a guy who could make a case for himself for a Hall of Fame at some point in time? I think Kenley Jansen is kind of a shoo-in. 2-time Trevor Hoffman Reliever of the Year award winner. He's got a World Series under his belt, 4-time All-Star, third, like I said, on the list in saves. The other 2, I go back and forth on. Aroldis Chapman is a special, special arm, and I think that what he's done in his career, a lot of people who have felt the benefit of having him come out of the bullpen would probably like to see him fall into the same category. Far less innings, far less saves than we have seen from Kenley Jansen, but around a similar career WAR, both around 24, which makes you wonder, does he fit the bill? So I think it's a good question. I don't necessarily have a good answer for you, but I do like that you brought the topic to us.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the Kenley Jansen being a shoo-in, and it's very unfortunate, but Kimbrell's career, I believe he just got called up by the Mets, maybe? I could be crazy
he did.
There.
Yeah, the other day he did.
His career is effectively over in most terms of the word. He's not going to add to these career totals. Aroldis Chapman's not done. Like, I would like to point out, last year, he was a top 2 reliever in baseball, 1.17 ERA, 3.6 B WAR last year, and he was 37. There is a real chance that he crosses that 25-26 WAR mark. He gets to the 400 save mark, and he gets to the 900 inning pitch mark at the end of his career. I don't think he's done playing baseball, and these are 3 guys that I grew up watching. These are the 3 closers that, were always there my entire life watching baseball. Chapman made his debut in 2010. I was 5 years old when he made his debut. I'm turning 21 in 5 days now, and he is still one of the best relievers in baseball. Chapman is borderline unreal, and I think, like you said with relievers, comparative to starters, if a reliever blows a couple saves, it's going to be tough for him to play. It's going to be tough for him to get back that closer role. If a starter has a couple bad starts and they have a decent reputation, they're still getting tossed back out there. If Aroldis Chapman were to show up and blow his next 5 or 6 saves, the Red Sox aren't going to keep tossing him back out there. But he keeps getting deals and keeps getting opportunities to pitch because of how trusted he is. Same with Jansen, same with Kimbrel. I think there's a real case all 3 of these guys are going to be Hall of Famers. That's where my vote would be if I had one. But I'm very fascinated to see how it's going to pan out for them once they are on the ballot.
Yeah, I think the only thing I have for you to make Kimbrel's case is that he's one of only, I believe, 10 pitchers, relief pitchers, to win Rookie of the Year. Now, that being said, of those who have done it, none of the rest of them are going to be Hall of Famers, but none of the rest of them put up the career that Craig Kimbrel did. I shouldn't say aren't going to be. For those that I know on the list, have not been and won't be. But Houston Street's on there. Andrew Bailey's on there. Devin Williams was the most recent in 2020, I believe, if I'm not getting that incorrect. But, that's the only thing I'd say for you is that having won a Rookie of the Year, he's got an accolade under his belt to match some of the other stuff that he's put together. Some of the other stuff being numbers over his career. I don't know why I can't think of words tonight. But again, like I said, I think it was a fun topic you brought to the table. It'll be an interesting one to hear what other people think about.
Also, before we move on, one of our assistant coaches here is an Indians fan. I texted him like 20 minutes ago saying if he had any thoughts on Jose Ramirez that he would like to share. This is a guy who's from Cleveland. He's from Cleveland, born in Cleveland, a bigger Cleveland fan. He's a Browns fan. That just shows you how committed to the city of Cleveland.
That's a Beливelander.
He said that he is a rare player committed to the city, committed to the community, and means more to the city and the community than almost any player who's come through Cleveland in the past 20 years in the ultimate spark plug. And he also said he knocked Tim Anderson out of the MLB, and we can thank him for that as well.
True. Very true. Knocked him out cold and ended his career, which was one of the craziest things that I think I've ever seen happen across baseball as a whole. Okay, moving on now to topic number 3. I want to talk about this, but we don't need to belabor the point. We've talked about ABS, the automated balls and strikes challenge system, a good bit, but it brought on the topic, Ryan and I were talking about this the other day, of all these other rules that Rob Manfred has implemented really over the last 5 or 6 years that I think have actually been better for the game of baseball, whether it's watching it, whether it's the necessary strategy that has either been removed or brought into the game that I've kind of appreciated. And the first one going all the way back would be the 3-batter minimum rule for relievers. For those who don't know, if a reliever gets brought in, they have to pitch to a minimum of 3 batters or close out the inning. A new reliever can come in and start the inning if it only took 1 or 2 batters to finish that inning they came into. This was enacted in 2020. The goal of it was to make sure that teams weren't just cycling through arms. It was getting a little bit out of hand, all these matchups that people were playing batter to batter. It was hard for fans to watch. We were going to commercial breaks every 5 minutes. Pitcher would come in, throw to a batter, be done for the day. That rule was enacted. I think it's been great for the game. It's been more fun to watch. I don't really have many more thoughts on it, other than the fact that it has added a premium level of necessity to the bullpen and what a guy can do in the bullpen. No longer can you be a one-faceted arm or a one-pitch specialist, because you're going to have to come in and face guys that you wouldn't necessarily want to face or want to be in. It's also changed the way that managers write in lineup cards, right? You want to break up your lefties. You want to break up certain hitters so that teams can't play their bullpen against you. I think it's really fascinating to watch how that's changed the game. Moving on, 2023 is where we got kind of the biggest sweeping change of things that I think were meant to speed up the game. The pitch clock was enacted. The enlarged bases were placed into the ground. A disengagement rule for pitchers. So pitchers can only pick over twice. If they pick over a third time or disengage for a third time and don't get the batter or don't get the runner out, it is a balk and the runner gets to move up a base. And then defensive shift restrictions. The first three, I think, have been great for the game. Two of the three have greatly sped the game up. We went from watching games that were over 3 hours to now games that are 2.5 to 2 hours and 40 minutes. Way more reasonable, way more watchable. If you're going to a game, you better get in your seat. You're going to miss the first 2 innings. But if you're watching on TV, it keeps the pace up. It's great. It's way better this way. The defensive shift restriction, I think, has been one of the most fascinating. Jackson, did you know that Corey Seager saw his stats skyrocket after they added the defensive shift restrictions and guys no longer could play in the outfield grass and add 3 guys to the right side of the field? He went from putting up a 3.8 B WAR to a 7.2 B WAR the next season. I believe playing in less games. And his average went from 245 to 327. No longer did he get hampered by hitting really hard ground balls to the right side. Other players that were heavily impacted, Jose Ramirez, at the time, Jared Kelenic, Josh Naylor, Kyle Tucker, Anthony Santander, Anthony Rizzo, Bryce Harper, Cody Bellinger, a lot of big names for guys that really struggled to just get some easy hits early in their career or during this time in their career when shifts became all the rage. Do you feel like I'm curious your feelings on the shift as a whole, as a pitcher, as a pitching guy. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. Just play your position. We've been playing our positions for 250 years. Why are we moving guys all over the field? It drives me nuts.
I've always personally thought, like when I was younger, I thought it was kind of stupid. Like I always had the ignorant thought of if you're a hitter, hit the ball the other way. And then I got to college, and because we shift guys very heavily at ETSU, especially when we get big lefties, we'll throw 3 and 4 in the outfield. We're going to do it. But then guess what we do? We're throwing 92, 93 in on his hands and telling him he's going to have to hit that over the wall in order to beat the shift. Because it is tough to hit 92, 93 in the hands the other way. And that's something that I've personally kind of learned with the whole argument of shifts, is that these guys are getting pitched in ways to hit into the shift. They're getting pitched in ways where it's tough to get a 93, 95, 97 mile an hour fastball and get it the other way. They're getting pitched in ways to their swing in which it's tough for them to, get hits that way. And I originally didn't love the shift restrictions, but I'm honestly kind of a fan of them now. As you kind of said, I mean, Corey Seager hitting a 107 mile an hour ground ball into the 4-hole should be a hit, with all due respect. And, I mean, I think guys just need to play their positions, and, pitchers need to make the pitches that they need to make. But, I mean, like I said, once I got to college, my mindset on shifts kind of changed a little bit because, pitching coaches and pitchers are making it very tough on hitters to hit out of shifts, and not just like I've heard 1,000 old heads say, just get the bat head out, swing it the other way, and they won't shift you. Yeah, it's tough to get that on a 98 mile an hour fastball in the hands.
Yeah, it's very hard. Very hard to do that when you're not being pitched with an opportunity to hit the ball the other way. Now, if you're only getting pitched on the outer half and you're still not finding a way to hit the ball the other way, that's a different conversation.
Agreed.
The other thing I want to talk about, obviously, just some notes that we have noticed as far as ABS is concerned, just as a last little hit on this topic. We're seeing pitchers kind of being forced directly into the zone, and if not, We're seeing the rate of walks already increased across the league, over 2% higher this year up to this point than all of last year. And then on the flip side, when you look at pitching, Logan Webb is a great example of this. In 34 starts last year, 33 of them, Logan Webb received strike calls that were not in the zone. This year in 4 starts, he's already had 2 outings in which he did not get a strike call out of the zone at all. The only called strikes that he had were inside the zone. That's extremely difficult for a guy that's not going to blow you away, buy you stuff. It's going to be a nice pendulum swing back to the hitters, and I think that's, honestly, I think that's partially why Manfred really likes the idea of running this gambit and letting it play, but also because the fans generally just wanted to see the calls be right? Everybody now knows what the strike zone is. It's a defined space. Why can't we just get it right all the time, I think is the moniker. So those are just some thoughts. Jackson, I actually think you weren't a part of any of the conversations relative to ABS. Do you like it so far? Are you enjoying it? Do you think about it from the standpoint of the excitement hitter to hitter, or is it more just, from a fan perspective of wanting it to be correct?
I mean, I really like it. I want it to be correct. I was sick and tired of games in the 8th and 9th inning ending, or big moments being zapped by a pitch that was 5 inches outside, a foot outside, being called strikes. I love it as a whole. I have a couple nitpick issues with it. First off, I think they need to do a whole, in football thing where less than 2 minutes, they get rid of the, you have to throw a challenge flag and everything's automatically reviewed. I think something in baseball, like after the 8th inning, a close pitch is automatically reviewed. Just so if a team runs out of challenges or something happens, the game's still not in the umpire's hands.
How do you run that? Like, the umpire's got something in his ear and he calls the pitch and someone in his ear goes, no, that was a strike, and he's got to stop the game and be like, sorry, I was wrong, that was a strike. Or like, sorry, I called it a strike, it was actually a ball. Nobody here is allowed to tell me, but, it is the case. Like, does a batter have to, take his one time out of his at-bat to, give a little bit more time for that to be told to him? I don't know. I like the thought process. I think you definitely have something there. The logistics of making it happen would probably be a little difficult. But
agreed.
Definitely a noteworthy thought. With that, we'll move to final thoughts. Anything from you this week? Any final thoughts on the week of baseball, the week of life? What do you got for the listeners?
I'm going back to college baseball. I'm going back to the Southern Conference that ETSU plays in. I tweeted about this previously this week. I believe this is the most underrated conference in Division I college baseball. Year in, year out, it is top 7, top 8 in RPI. Right now, the RPI rankings, for those who don't know, RPI is like a strength of schedule or strength of record for college baseball, and they have it for conferences as well. Right now, it goes SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10, Sun Belt, American, and then it's the Southern Conference, ahead of Conference USA,
right.
Ahead of the Big West, ahead of the Southland. They have 5 teams. The Southern Conference right now has 5 teams top 100 in RPI. Year in and year out, this is one of the best mid-major conferences, and I think it needs to be talked about like that more. It consistently has some incredible baseball. It's consistently getting guys drafted, sending guys to ACC, SEC programs from the Southern Conference. This is one of the best mid-major conferences in baseball. I feel like it needs to be talked about like that more.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. I love watching Southern Conference baseball. I think it's just another great reminder that across the breadth of college baseball as a whole, Division I, Division II, Division III, junior college, NAIA, there's a whole heck of a lot of good baseball out there. And with that, I give you the update on Denison baseball. Because it was another good week for the Big Red. They took down some in-conference opponents. They won 4 conference games against Wabash College in Indiana, against Oberlin College in Ohio, and then a local opponent in Marietta College. They now have won 23 3 straight games, getting Coach Mike Deegan to win number 400 in his career and win number 400 over 13 plus seasons, averaging just around 30 wins per year. And when you play 40 regular season games and you're at a program for 13 plus years, putting up 30 plus wins per season is damn near impossible, especially in the age that we're in, where guys are leaving year in, year out, especially from top Division III programs to go play Division I. You're trying to recruit to a location like the middle of Ohio. You're trying to recruit to schools that cost a lot of money, schools that have very, very difficult academics, and to still find a way to continuously be a really strong program inside and out and sit atop Division III baseball is really admirable, really fun to watch. And I'm very proud to have played there, played for Coach Deegan, and to watch what they're able to do year in and year out since I've left. And with that, I leave you with the reminder, as always, go give us a follow on Twitter. Go give us a follow on Instagram, on TikTok. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch the podcast every single week on Tuesday mornings. Go subscribe to Apple or Spotify if you prefer to have it in your headphones. Listen to it in the car. Don't watch the video in the car while you're driving. And with that, I say thank you for joining us here for another episode of Baseball Unstitched. It's Jackson. I'm Evan. It would have been Ryan. Have a great week.